My name is Grace Laudick. I am a graduate student in the Strategic Communications program, and today I will be sharing with you about my research project titled A New Era of Social Comparison: How Sexual Content on Instagram Sparks Self-Comparative Behaviors and Influences Women's Self-Esteem. Research focused on answering two primary questions. First, what factors influence women to post sexual content on Instagram? I defined sexual content as sexually explicit or suggestive photos designed to garner sexual attention or attraction. Second, my research question attempted to answer how viewing and posting suggestive or sexually suggestive content on Instagram influence women's self-esteem related to body image. My project was inspired by the increase in sexual content that has been posted to Instagram, especially during COVID. This trend has continued in the post-COVID world. I utilized social comparison theory, a theory developed by social psychologist Leon Festinger in 1954. His theory stated that people measure their self-worth and value based on how they assess themselves in comparison to others. My background research focused on the effects of hypersexual media on young women and girls. I chose to focus on young women and girls in my research because research has shown that this demographic is the most susceptible towards the negative mental health effects of hypersexual media. I also chose to utilize social comparison theory as a mechanism because research has shown that hypersexual media tends to create self-comparative behaviors in young women, which results in negative self-esteem related to body image. I distributed a 21-question survey through Google Forms on Instagram. I chose this mechanism because it allowed the participants to be immersed in the world of social media and to have the experiences and feelings of being on Instagram freshly in their mind, because this was the platform by which they would access this survey. My survey was influenced by the Rosenberg Self-Esteem Scale. This is a self-esteem survey that is utilized to help individuals self-assess how they feel about themselves, their self-worth, and their self-value. I measured my responses from a 1 to 5 scale. This is also known as a Likert scale index. Through 1 to 5, I asked participants whether they strongly disagreed or strongly agreed with the statement. Also, I would ask participants whether there was no frequency towards something or a lot of frequency towards something. My survey was just for females between the ages of 18 and 28. I chose to focus on this demographic because research showed that this demographic is most susceptible towards the negative influences of hypersexual media. The variables that I focused primarily on in my research was exploring the influences of women's desire to post sexual content on Instagram. In my statistical analysis, I primarily focused on my variables of frequency of exposure as well as overall time spent on Instagram every day. Partway through my research, however, my research shifted between exploring the correlation between desire for attention and frequency of exposure to sexual content. My research showed that there was a strong correlation between frequency of exposure to sexual content on Instagram and a woman's desire for attention through her posting habits on Instagram. This shows that an increased frequency in exposure to sexual content on Instagram may lead to an increased likelihood of a woman to post such content of herself. 20% of women in my survey responded that they post sexual content on Instagram regularly for validation and affirmation. Over half of women that took this survey agreed that viewing sexual content on Instagram has a negative effect on their self-esteem. This confirms research that hypersexual media is damaging towards women's self-esteem related to body image. About 75% of women believe that sexual content on Instagram gets a lot of likes and attention. If attention is a woman's motivating factor for her when she posts content, she may be more likely to post explicit or suggestive content on Instagram in order to yield similar results. About 35% of women also feel pressured by the presence of sexual content on Instagram to also post such content of themselves. This confirms social comparison theory in media, that women regularly compare themselves to the types of content posted online, and they feel pressured to post similar content of themselves. The results of my research indicate that a sizable portion of women do feel the effects of sexual content on Instagram on their mental health and negative self-esteem related to body image. My research also indicates that a large portion of women do feel pressured to post similar content on Instagram. The more frequently they are exposed to sexual content on Instagram, the more likely they are to feel the need to post similar content themselves to get likes, validation, and affirmation. Attention is a very strong factor in influencing women to post such content on Instagram. The results I presented to you today are my bachelor's capstone results. I am now running a similar survey for my master's capstone to continue to explore the effects of hypersexual media on women. For my future research, I will be increasing my size of respondents to at least 200 respondents to gain a more accurate understanding of the effects of hypersexual media on females. One of my other limitations was solely researching young females. For my future research, I would like to increase the age range of my group to see how hypersexual media affects females as a whole, not just young females. For my future work in my master's capstone, I will be delving into more specific demographic data to understand the other external factors that might affect how women either positively or more negatively respond to hypersexual media. Demographic data that I will be surveying includes socioeconomic background, political affiliation, religious background, as well as cultural backgrounds. The ways in which my research can be utilized is to address the growing public health issue for women's mental health issues, especially related to body image and self-esteem. I also hope that the research that I have gathered can also help to create healthier community guidelines on Instagram to help women be able to come to terms with the type of content that they are interacting with on Instagram, understanding healthier coping mechanisms and how they can interact with the content on Instagram, and how just because they run into a certain type of content on Instagram doesn't mean that they have to post the same thing